But some things happened which were really tragic, even then with hospice. The second most important thing I learned in that time was when people feel, it's a time when families feel utterly helpless because there's nothing left to do but sit and wait. And the feeling of just total despair and utter helplessness, I don't know how else to put it, can be so consuming. But what I learned was that that was exactly the moment that I was being called upon to do my most important work with my mom. And it was to help birth her soul into the next world. And so I write about these things particularly in the book. If you are not aware, and I'm terrible at self-promoting because I feel uncomfortable doing it, but I did write a book about this, and it's called Birthing Death. Birthing the Soul Through the Death of the Body is how I got the title. And it's not just my story with my mom. At the end of every chapter, there are what I call tool bag thoughts, and it asks you pointed questions about your journey and incorporating the things that I learned as tools along your way. Because when I sat in that waiting room, in the hospice waiting room, what was so profound to me is that while all the creature comforts were there, you know, the coffee, the tea, the TV, the magazines, Kleenex boxes, there was nothing there for what was happening inside of me. And I just said, felt so strongly, there has got to be something there. And that's why I wrote the book. So I'll get into more of this later. And they are from your bookstore, by the way. I saw a lovely display in there about them. I was so surprised and pleased. So I want to take you through a journey. Many of you can relate to this, and I call it the clueless patient advocate. Not because anyone's stupid, it's because you would never think about this stuff unless you've been through this kind of an ordeal. Mom's had a stroke, says my aunt. And that's what actually happened. I was at work one day, and my aunt called. She found my mom on the floor of her house after her and my uncle had spent all afternoon there cleaning up the yard, which was their normal thing. He'd cut the grass, she'd pick the weeds. Something told her after 2 or 3 hours being there, something told her to check the house. The blinds were closed, that didn't faze her because she knew my mom was about to take off on vacation. Nevertheless, she checked the house. She looked in the front door and she saw my mom laying there on the floor. I had talked to her about 11 o'clock the night before, so I figured she had laid there about 17 hours before she was found. Your mom's had a stroke, says my aunt. I'll rush to the hospital as my mom's patient advocate. Before I even hit the registration desk, questions are swirling in my mind. Do I have her patient advocacy designation? Is she comatose? Is she dying? I meet the clerk, who's pressing. What are her medications? What's her health history? How old is she? What's her insurance? When did symptoms begin? It's like these questions just start pounding at you. And there's no time to think. You just react. I have no time to catch my breath. Never mind that my fright is surging like Old Faithful, continually trying to short circuit my thinking. Have you been there? Have you been in these intense moments? And your feelings like are overwhelming and you have a hard time keeping your thought process in order? She's had a massive stroke. I wait for hours. No one's telling me anything. I'm just sitting there in the emergency room. No one is telling me anything. Can you imagine? You're sitting there wondering if your loved one is dying and no one's telling you anything. It's like, what do you do? That's where the clueless patient advocate comes in. No one teaches us this stuff. There's no training for it, and yet someone's life is in our hands. We have no medical background. We have no idea how this medical maze works, how these systems, subsystems work, and there we are, and we're supposed to do something. What am I supposed to do? Nurses are busy. Doctors are rushing around. So I begin to ask questions of anybody who's passing by. I get those on-the-fly replies. You ever get those? From medical people, you just know it's a kind of a generalized blow-off answer. Short sentences, glancing eye contact. I feel like a total outsider, desperately trying to communicate within a world that has its own language, its own customs, its own protocols, and it's all designed to serve the masses, the individual often gets lost. Still, here I am. I am totally clueless to know what to do next. I was neither a geriatric care manager nor an elder law attorney at this time. I didn't know. How would I? No one taught me. There's no place to go. You are on your own. I finally gathered myself enough to hail the hospital administrator. It occurred to me that there's got to be a head honcho here somewhere. There's got to be an administrator here somewhere. If I can't get the medical people to talk to me, I will get an administrator to intervene. So I called the hospital administrator. Finally, I start getting something, and I am allowed to go back and see her. This was in 1990. The customs at the time were different than they are now. You know, there was this more distancing between the medical people and the family. And I find that she's semi-comatose. She can't speak at all. Her eyes are closed. The next 24 hours are critical for brain swelling. I wait some more. How many have been in this waiting game?
Lots of us.
Yeah, I see some heads now. It's a desperate time. Hours turn to days. The immediate crisis ebbs. Mine is just beginning, as is her recovery. I begin to feel overwhelmed with possibilities. Will she be able to come home? Will she be in a nursing home the rest of her life? That's what the doctors are telling me. Can she even get into rehabilitation, much less do it? Well, if she can, which rehab program is best? I don't know how to evaluate them. What do you look at? Will insurance cover all of this? Weeks pass. She's made it into the nursing home rehab program. I'm there every day, helping and encouraging her. I walk in one day and she points to her stomach. Her speech is totally knocked out from the stroke. She's pointing to her stomach. I do not know what she is talking about. I go to the nursing unit and I say to her, the nurse, she's pointing to her stomach. What's going on? And I was told she got a shot of heparin. And I knew enough to know that was a fast-acting blood thinner. And I said, well, that's kind of strange because she's already on Coumadin, which is a blood thinner. Why are you giving her a blood thinner on top of a blood thinner? And I'd already studied enough about stroke to know that you could have what's called a hemorrhagic stroke. That's where the blood vessel just burst. Versus an embolytic stroke where a blood clot forms somewhere and it travels to the brain and it blocks the artery. I knew the person could have a hemorrhagic stroke. So the nurse didn't know why she was getting 2 blood thinners, and so I asked to talk to the doctor. So I'm assuming the doctor's on site. She picks up the phone. She calls the doctor. I said, okay. And so I asked him. And he says the most surprising thing to me. He says, well, I didn't know she was on Coumadin. And I said, well, why don't you know? Weren't you here? And he said, well, the nurses didn't tell me she was on Coumadin. And I said, weren't you here? He says, no, I do everything by phone. I'm only required to see your mom once every 30 days. I mean, I'm learning these things as shockwaves in the heat of the moment. You never even saw her, and you're doing everything over the phone. Yes, he says. So that's what you can expect in a nursing home. How would I have known that? How would you have known that? That's what began my 22-year odyssey. So I've got some handouts. I'm not sure that I have enough. I have enough of these. Okay. Karen, maybe you can help at this point. I'm going to back up a little bit and just give you kind of a picture presentation of what is elder law. Elder law is very hard to explain because it's not any one area of the law. And by the way, in terms of a better transition to this, it was because of my mom and these experiences that at the age of 40 I went to law school. it so occurred to me, being with her every day, walking through the medical maze, that if she didn't have me going to bat for her, as uninformed as I was at the time, I shudder to think what would have happened. I mean, I just gave you one example of what could have killed her. There were several others that happened along the way despite my daily intervention. What happens to those people that have patient advocates that were more clueless than me at the time, or that had no one? I mean, I can only imagine they die needlessly, or suffer needlessly because they're not getting the care that they need. So I went to law school, and I knew from day one that I wanted to be an elder law attorney. There's not a lot of money in it. I am not rich. In fact, I'm not even meeting my bills right now. Elder law is working with people, usually of modest means, to take care of business, to qualify them for Medicaid, to do Medicare advocacy, and so on and so forth, as this one handout explains. So I first wanted to give you a broad view of what I do and what elder law is. And you should also know that elder law attorneys are different from each other. We all have different strengths. Some get into very high-end estate planning. I don't do that. Tax law bores me to tears, so I don't do it. Some get into very high-end Medicaid planning. I don't do that. I think it's too risky, and I think if you've got that amount of money, you shouldn't be applying for Medicaid. So I've got, you know, there's different moral boundaries that we all have. Some get into a lot of litigation with their elder law practice. I don't do litigation. I'm not a warrior. I'm more of a mediator. So if and when you are ever in need of an elder law attorney, my emphasis is interview 3. We all have our different strengths. According to what the situation needs, you might find one more suited than another. Elder law encompasses a whole gamut. It's not like criminal law where there's a specialized area of law and statutes that you learn about. Elder law is all over the board. It's the legal needs of a special part of the population. So it could get into property law, it could get into public benefits, it could get into estate planning, it could get into probate. I mean, it's just all over the board.
Are there lawyers that have offices that have 3 or 4 different specialties?
Oh, yeah.
So that's would be a lawyer, like you would look for a group that had a specialty of all.
Yes. There are elder law and geriatric care management were twin professions that were birthed in the mid-'80s. So by now, it's been around for 30 years, it's more familiar to people to say geriatric care manager or elder law attorney. 20 years ago, everybody would look blank. So there are now firms that specialize in elder law. And if you go to the Yellow Pages, which is us old-timers' way of finding things, now they do it on smartphones, and Google in or look for elder law, you'll see many more listings now. The twin profession, which is where I actually started, and I do have enough of these, is geriatric care management. And this visual gives you a sample of what geriatric care managers get into. I did not know about geriatric care management when my journey started. I stumbled across it because I am a voracious reader, and I have always been my whole life. So as I was researching my mom's condition, I came across this geriatric care manager, and I hired one. And this is a broad representation about what geriatric care managers get into. So my first point of education here is to just inform you of what these two professions are. Because there's still not, there's not as much awareness even yet about elder law and geriatric care management as there is like CPAs and tax attorneys and estate planners, right? So this gives you an easy way to try and understand these two professions. Yeah. It's another symptom of pushing 60. I left my purse over there.
Oh.
I do that all the time. How many of you are spending more time in the hereafter You know, you go to a room and you scratch your head and you're wondering, what the hell did I come in here after? It drives me crazy. It just drives me nuts.
Me too.
It's happened. Say what? I'm not alone. It's happening with increasing regularity. Oh, which reminds me for some odd reason of a joke. Can I tell you a lawyer joke?
Yes.
It kind of brings in a Catholic priest too. Is that safe territory?
Sure.
Yeah, because I don't want to offend anyone. It's cute.
Go for it.
So there was this young couple. And they were headed on their way to a church. Could have been this one for all I know. The only sad part of the story is they got killed in a car accident along the way. So they're up in line waiting for St. Peter, and it's a long line, so they have a long time to talk. And they're chit-chatting, and they actually wonder if they can get married in heaven. So they approach St. Peter, and they finally ask him, can we get hitched here in heaven? And St. Peter says, I've never been asked that question before. Let me check it out. So he takes off, and he's gone for the longest. It's like weeks turn into months. He's gone for 2 months. He finally comes back. He's all tired and haggard looking, and he scratches his beard and says, yeah, we can marry you here in heaven. So the kids say, well, you were gone a long time. We got to talking again. If we get hitched up here in heaven and it don't work out, can we get a divorce? St. Peter throws up his arms and says, oh, come on, guys. It took me 2 months to find a lawyer. Now you want, or a priest. Now you want me to find a lawyer? Is that one okay?
Yeah, that's good.
It took me 2 months to find a lawyer. Now you want me to, no, a priest. Now you want me to find a lawyer?
Yeah. Cute.
Well, I got some good chuckles out of it. Okay. Patient advocacy. You will get these, in fact, I should probably hand this out now, so if you want to take notes on the back of it, you can. Giving you your exercise for the day. When I studied for the law school bar exam, in fact, I did it in this church. Interestingly enough, John and Doris remember. I even made little footprints and taped them on the carpet to where I was studying, and the footprints said, I need a hug. And I was studying in a back room here because the law school library was far too dry, and my home was just too distracting. I wanted to, work in the garden or something. But here was perfect. I could socialize if I wanted. I could be alone. I could grab a cup of coffee. While I was studying for the bar exam, what I did, because the bar exam is just unbelievably hard. These are very bright people taking this test and half flunk. It's just a miserable experience. Anyway, I would make up acronyms to help me remember, and acronyms that related to the subject matter. So I made up an acronym with advocate. And you'll see that as this handout comes around. So, A, ask questions. Now, when you're in this medical environment, is there a front and back?
No, this one just has the
There's
front.
two different though.
But they're two different, is you got nothing on the back of this one, you got patient advocate,
No,
and then she's
actually,
got a
I think
different.
the two come together.
Okay.
Yeah, there are two. I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, there's more.
Finally.
So this is yours. Oh, this is yours.